I just want to say a few more words on the Ukraine-Russia war, because this is a war, let's be honest, let's not mince our words. I obviously, look, I'm not a professional military person. I don't know all of the details of what's going on the ground. I'm not there, but I am following all the news channels that I can from every country I can, in every language that I understand. And this is how I see it at the moment. So Volodymyr Zelensky, who is the president of Ukraine, as we know, he's on air every single day. He's appealing to NATO and saying, look, establish an air umbrella, establish a no-fly zone. Why is he doing that? The only reason I can think of is that the Ukrainian Air Force has either been shot out the sky or it can no longer fly because Russian cruise missiles have knocked out all of their runways and all of their air bases. And as I said before, these planes do need maintenance. They'll fall out the sky unless every time they go down, they're checked over and little sensors, every little thing that goes wrong on them needs to be fixed. And they're not probably getting any spare parts or anything like that at the moment, particularly as they're all their best planes, certainly they're multi-role planes. They're MiG-29s, they're Russian planes. I don't think they're getting many spare parts from Russia at the moment. So this is why he's calling for the no-fly zone. He wants NATO to protect them. And I can understand that because with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, sort of when was that, when the Berlin Wall came down, 9th of November 89, and then over the next couple of years, the Soviet Union kind of disintegrated, and they signed the Minsk Agreement, where Western nations, I've not studied the treaty, but my understanding is that the Western nations guaranteed the safety of those former Soviet Union countries. And as part of the nuclear disarmament, because obviously, Russia's kind of left and they just left all their nuclear weapons behind and all their other weapons, as part of the nuclear disarmament, it was agreed that the West would protect them. So they've given up their best weapons, their nuclear weapons, in anticipation and in the belief that this treaty would be upheld. They would be protected if ever it came to a war of national survival, and that's what's happening at the moment. It's not dissimilar to the Paris Treaty, not in terms of all the rest of it, but just in terms of the situation. The Paris Treaty after World War One, signed Palace of Versailles 1919, when everything was agreed, and then Woodrow Wilson went back home and Congress refused to ratify the treaty. Hence, France felt unprotected. And that seems to be kind of what's happening here, that we have made agreements with them, but, what's the expression, I'm not even going to say the expression, it's slightly rude, but it's all about, the mouth makes kind of a check and then, the other part can't cash it, this kind of thing. It's a little bit like that. So first observation, I believe the Ukrainian Air Force is unable to fly anymore. So higher airspace is certainly governed now by Russia. In terms of low-level attacks, I think they've still got a lot of surface-to-air missiles. I know the EU has shipped out 1,700 old Soviet-made, the equivalent of our Stingers, but, Soviet ones, ex-Soviet ones from East Germany, basically, that the Bundeswehr had, and they've given them, or they're in the process of giving them to Ukrainians. So I think probably at low level, if you want to fly an attack helicopter in, you're going to get shot down. And if we believe the Ukrainian military, they've lost, or they've shot down at least 12 Russian attack helicopters. But higher level, those things are not effective. And we're seeing the airstrikes go in. And there must be a reason why Zelensky is absolutely demanding and trying to shame the West. Clearly, Russia is dominating the air, and that's a problem. And also, you see that large armoured column that's been slowly making its way towards Kiev. It would appear that it's been under attack from the ground. And again, that's because the British gave the Ukrainian army a ton of Milan missiles, which are wire-guided anti-tank missiles with heat warheads, high explosive anti-tank. Extremely effective missiles, even though they're old now, extremely effective. We use them in the Falklands for taking out trenches. This was one of the ways I did a video on the Battle of Goose Green. You can literally, wire guide them up, send them down. It's almost like a computer game, looking at the screen, and you can explode them in a trench. And we use them to great effect in many battles in the Falklands. And clearly they'll destroy a T-72. And that's what's happening. This is why the convoy is held up. You obviously take it out at the front. It's a very narrow road. And and suddenly it can't move forwards. And so that's probably the primary reason why it's not moving forwards, along with maybe they've all run out of fuel. Because a tank has, I don't know, I forget the numbers of these T-72s, but, maybe it's got 50 miles autonomy, then it needs topping up, and all the rest of it, the crew can't stay in there for days. It's... But what we're not seeing is sustained air attack. Now, what we do know is that the Ukrainian Air Force bought at least 6 drones, unmanned aerial vehicles, called by a Turkish. It's a surname of the person who owns the company, who I believe is the son-in-law of Erdogan, the president, but I can't pronounce it. The name of the name of them. But they're small, cheap drones, but they're armed with very effective. I think one can carry 4 air-to-ground missiles that will take out, a tank or an armored vehicle or a truck or whatever. I assume these are gone now because we're not seeing any more combat footage of these things being taken out from the air. Why is that? Why have they gone? Because I believe Ukraine certainly had 6. They had a big order placed. Who knows how many have been delivered? They're trying to order more. And these are small and cheap, relatively. If you destroy a tank, you've already, gained, a net gain, because a tank's more expensive. One of these things, they're cheap and very effective. But what's going on? Why is that not happening? Well, the problem is the Russians have a lot of these S-400 and maybe even S-500 surface-to-air missile launchers that are extremely effective. Now, these things are excellent. They can take out a cruise missile. They won't just, an aeroplane is easy pickings for these things. They can take out a missile, a hypersonic missile, let alone a drone. I don't know the speed of these drones, if they're subsonic, supersonic. I've got no idea. I assume they're subsonic. But either way, these things are easy pickings, and they've got loads of these. The Russians have loads of them. So I assume they've taken all of those out. They've taken out all... I mean, you've got to remember that the Ukrainians are fighting with, as I say, their frontline strength is MiG-29s. It's an old Russian aircraft. The Russians know how to shoot down a MiG-29, even if you arm it with the best Western air-to-air missiles. I assume these are gone now. They only had about 40 to begin with. So this is why Volodymyr Zelensky is appealing for help from the West. He really needs it. And what they're asking for is this. They want the Poles to send in their MiG-29s, because they got a load as well, ex-Soviet MiG-29s, that the Ukrainian pilots can fly. But here's the problem. How do you send them over the border? On the back of a truck? Where they take off from? What you need to do is fly them off from a Polish airbase, and then they get shot down on the way unless they're fully armed with defensive and offensive capabilities. And then suddenly a NATO country is at war with Russia. Even if it's a Ukrainian pilot, if it's flown from Poland, clearly that's involving a NATO country. So it's very difficult. This is what they're saying at the moment, is that the US could replenish Polish stocks with, American planes, and they give the old Russian planes to the Ukrainians because their pilots can fly the things. But it's problematic in the way I've just described. So all of this is going on at the moment. Why is it we can't establish an air umbrella? I was listening to an air commander, or former air commander, air marshal, British, and the way he put it was this. He said, if we establish a no-fly zone, if we declare a no-fly zone over Ukraine, what's going to happen? Well, you go in there, and the first thing you have to do is take out these S-400, S-500, ground-to-air missiles. You have to take those out first. So immediately, you're not just flying there, you're going to combat. You need to use all of your aerial assets to take out those things on the ground. Secondly, any Russian aircraft, you need to shoot them down. And the way he put it was this, and, it was very stark, and I've not heard language like this ever in my lifetime, and I'm nearly 38. He said, if you do that, you need to be prepared for a war of national survival. That was the language he used. Because the reality is, in terms of the body of doctrine that Russia follows, it's not the same as us. With us, nuclear options are beyond the pale. Beyond the pale. In the Falklands, we preferred to send in the Black Buck raids to crater the runway at Stanley, which needed about 16 tankers to get one Vulcan bomber dropping conventional, 500-pound bombs over Stanley to crater the runway. We could easily have sent in a tactical nuke. We had them, but we didn't do it. It's beyond the pale. We preferred to go to this massive effort using basically all the British tanker strength just to get one bomber over there to half crater the runway, rather than using a tactical nuke, because back then the Navy had plenty of them with them, but they didn't use them. It's not that way with the Russian body of doctrine. Basically, they have a scale. The way it's been put to me anyway, from what I've read, like Petraeus was talking about this, you got 4 layers. One is just sending in a few little squads of men being real softy, and that's what they tried at first. It didn't work. They were repelled. 2 is what we're on now, where you send in larger formations of people, and you start, targeting things with cruise missiles, with long-range artillery, all the rest of it. 3 is where you start using thermobaric bombs, and cluster bombs, and things that are prohibited by the Geneva Convention. 4 is where you start using the nukes. And what the Russians have are Iskander missiles. They have a range at their maximum of about, 250, 300 kilometres, depending on which one, how new it is. But let's forget, they're based in what was formerly East Prussia, which is now Kaliningrad. They can reach every European capital other than London and Paris. And these are nuclear missiles, and they have loads of them, and they're on mobile rocket launchers. You see these big, heavy trucks, and you have these, and you don't know whether it's got a nuke as the war tip or whether it's, a conventional armament or what it is, but they've got plenty of them. And so the reality is, he didn't choose those words lightly. He chose them very carefully. If you establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine, and we begin shooting down, we'd have to go in initially to take out the defences, the air defences that they're bringing in. That's what you do to establish a no-fly zone. It's a war of national survival. It's World War III against Russia, basically. That's the reality. So it's clearly impossible. But at the same time, I understand, and when I say it's clearly impossible, the reason is because Russia, despite spending only a quarter what the EU does on defence every year, and that's not counting, America and Britain, we spend far more on defence than Russia does because, the EU is very, very powerful. And NATO's far more powerful even than the EU. But the reality is that we don't have the frontline strength. We don't have a single armoured division anymore. We dissolved it a couple of years ago. It would take at least 3 or 4 armoured divisions to defend the Baltic states. So it's a mad situation. Now, in terms of what's actually happening on the ground, I know a lot of people seem to think that, is it just Western propaganda? Are all these pictures fabricated? Is it Ukrainians that are actually blowing up their own buildings and stuff? I don't think so. I mean, the video that we saw of the nuclear plant with the 6 reactors, which name I can't pronounce, that was obviously, there was clearly a firefight going on. You saw the tracer flying back and forth. The big fiery thing was clearly not a tank shell. That was a flare to light it up so they could, come in with the ground forces. If nuclear power stations in the Ukraine are anything like the UK, they're protected by armed guards as well. So when a few people died, it may have been armed security guards. We don't know. I don't think they were trying to blow up the reactors. They're not that dumb, especially as the prevailing wind across Europe is west to east. It's a westerly wind. So most of the fallout goes into Russia. So I don't think that was going to happen. And also these things can resist a jumbo jet smashing into them. So, yeah, they shouldn't be firefighting around them. But I don't fully exonerate the Ukrainians here, because when one of their MPs was asked, what's going to happen about the other, 15 nuclear sites, whatever you have in the Ukraine, they said, well, if Russia attacks them, we'll defend them. Now, if you're purely thinking about humanitarian stuff, you make those just a free area and you say, we're not going to fight over these. And if necessary, if you're forced back tactically, if you get flanked and whatnot, you just leave them open areas. You just say, we're not going to fight here. And so I don't know if that fighting was between literally nuclear security guards or whether that was Ukrainian army. But if it's Ukrainian army, you're very dumb to fight there. The reactors themselves are extremely secure. The danger is if the electricity goes off and the backup generators don't work, you've got no way of controlling the fuel rods. and potentially you get a meltdown or 6 meltdowns. And also you have the spent fuel rod pond, and that's another real danger at Fukushima. That was very depleted, nearly got unfurled, and a bit of that is vulnerable. That's what I've been told by the experts anyway. So, and other things, I mean, look, I've seen pictures of the Russians bringing in food and trying to help people out. In the places that they've, in inverted commas, liberated, I've no doubt that they're being fairly light. I don't think that they're, well, it's quite clear that they're not just, killing everyone protesting or anything like that. However, I do think that Ukraine is winning the propaganda war. Certainly, Zelensky is extremely charismatic. Yeah, he literally brought. I was watching on Deutsche Welle, the German news channel. He brought the translator to tears with his speech the other day. This is a powerful speaker, and of course, he's a trained actor, so it's not surprising. Look, I don't want to go into the rights and the wrongs. I understand that NATO have been pushing. Russia feels threatened. I also understand that Putin, is not a very nice man. He's clamped down on all religious freedoms. We see completely neutral people in places of worship getting stormed by guards in balaclavas, full body armour, with the most modern Kalashnikovs. And this is clearly ridiculous. And labelling basically anyone that doesn't agree with Putin's regime as a terrorist organisation, even if they're neutral. They have to agree. If they're publicly neutral, that makes them a terrorist. So I don't like his regime, but I also understand why, he sees this as part of Russia. It was traditionally Russia's breadbasket. But anyway, so get back to the air situation. So, no-fly zone is clearly out of the question. It would mean a full-scale war of national survival. Ukraine's Air Force clearly been wiped out the sky. They're currently trying to get more drones from Turkey. Will they arrive in time? I imagine they have very short takeoffs. These are very small drones. They're tiny compared with, for example, the ones that the Britain uses. So maybe they would. They'd probably take off from a road or a motorway or whatever. So I think they would be good, and they're heavily armed. They can take things out. But as I understand it, at the moment, it would appear Russia does have control of the skies, hence these petitions. But anyway, it's just a quick video, just my observations, and we await with interest. This armoured column is clearly being attacked by asymmetrical warfare from the sides as it makes its way. And certainly the Ukrainian army is being equipped with surface-to-air missiles to take out low-flying Russian aircraft and attack helicopters and things like that. And they're certainly being equipped with anti-tank weapons, and they're doing a job, so it's slowing it down. The problem comes, final comment, just about the humanitarian corridors. We had a lot of debate back and forth, humanitarian corridors. Who broke the truce? Who broke the ceasefire? Russia loves a humanitarian corridor, because once you've established it, and it's been in place for 12 hours, everyone else in the city is obviously a combatant. And let's not forget, this doesn't exclude men, women, children, all of them, because loads of women are strapping AKs over there. It's not, and traditionally, that was a big part of World War II. Some of the best snipers, the highest scoring, were women. So they can literally class everybody left in that city. If you've not fled via the humanitarian corridor, you're an enemy combatant. Therefore, you can be put under any sort of fire we want to. And believe me, the Russians have a hell of a lot of these multiple rocket launchers. It's like 36 missile tubes mounted on a T-72, and you can put thermobaric weapons. You put just conventional arms. I believe they even have small tactical nukes that can go in those things. So again, it's that ramping up you and go through. And this is why they'll agree to a humanitarian corridor, because it gives them carte blanche to do what they want. But that said, they probably don't want to, because they want to win over the hearts and minds, at least of the Russian-speaking Ukrainians, of which is about a third. Because many of these regions, the people did before this war see themselves as Russian. But I'm not sure once your house gets blown up, or a T-72 rumbles over your car, I don't know that you'll necessarily feel much kinship with the Russians. So I don't know. We watch and we wait with interest. As always, politically neutral, but we just observe and we comment. That's Krabby Temptations. Thank you.